Pride, tradition, excellence. We, the people. We, the Washington Tattoo.
Greetings, I'm Mark Riley, and welcome to the Washington Tattoo Podcast, where the world's musical traditions come to life. The Washington Tattoo is an international music and arts festival coming to the Washington, D.C. metro area. Our podcast explores the lives and stories of world-renowned musicians, dancers, producers, choreographers, artists, educators, arts advocates, and those who serve our cultural communities at large. For more information and donations, find us at www.thewashingtontattoo.com. Now please enjoy this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast, sharing the power of the arts, one story at a time. Hello everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast. I've got the incredible Jesse Seif on the other side over here.
Evening, Mark. How you doing? Good to talk to you.
I'm doing well. So this one is definitely a PASIC preview for 2020. If you're not familiar with PASIC, it is a part of the Percussive Arts Society. This is their international convention. So if you put PASIC together, Percussive Arts Society International Convention. It's usually held live, of course, but now with COVID, they're going online and everything's digital this year, similar to our story. But this episode is going to be really exciting because we're going to get to talk to Joshua Simonds, who is the actual PAS executive director. And so I know I've been to PASIC a bunch of times, got some great stories from there, but Jesse, you've also been to PASIC as well. So what are some of your thoughts about PASIC?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a couple times. I would have liked to have gone more, but for whatever reason, I have had conflicts since I had started in percussion. But I think the fact that we call it a society is kind of a testament to the gravity of what this event is. It's not just a gathering of percussionists. It's not just a bunch of vendors getting together and selling a bunch of stuff. It really is a collective of a community of percussionists and people that are all over the globe sharing the exact same art. And there's just something in the air whenever you're there, and even only being there a couple times, it's very evident. It's reminiscent for me of the DCI finals and WGI World Championships atmosphere, because you do have a lot of performing ensembles and artists and clinicians just mixing everywhere throughout the convention center, meeting each other, bumping into each other. There's that performance energy, and you see people that you admire, which is for me like the most exciting part, because right now you can go on YouTube and find performances, historic ones of any major percussionist or artist, and being able to actually meet those people is a really big deal. And that includes the vendors as well. So getting to meet, like, for example, Jim and Murray at Tap Space. We had worked together exclusively on publishing some pieces online. So I'd only gotten to know them through email, but actually getting to meet them in person was a really unique experience. So it's a really, really cool environment.
Well, and yeah, and Murray and Jim are just two classy people. So, I mean, getting to hang with them and kind of pick their brain. And, and by the way, they're geniuses.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, it's every time I'd work with them. So, I mean, you had published, which piece would you work with them on which piece?
The first and only one was Chostakovich. I made it sound like more, but I think that's because I'm ahead of myself in my own head thinking of it.
But that's a good thing. That's forward thinking. It's goal setting for more publications.
It is. Yeah, no, that was the big introduction to the publishing world for me. It was Chostakovich. So that's how this all kind of got started with the military bands. That was my audition piece. So they helped a lot in actually getting it palatable in a notated form.
Yeah, that was one of the crazy things, was trying to put, the traditional style of fifing and drumming styles, and how do you notate it and how do you write it. But yeah, that was something they were really good to talk to about, that whole process. But I'd like to move into PASIC preview for 2020. They've got some really amazing stuff If you check it out online, if you look in pas.org, you're going to go to PASIC. And honestly, if you look Friday, November 13th into Saturday, November 14th, they've got some really incredible clinics that are going to be on there. Unfortunately, we lost John S. Pratt, otherwise known as Jack Pratt, this past year. He passed away, as well as Alan Abel. So there are two kind of tribute / memorial clinics for those two gentlemen. And honestly, there's some huge heavy hitters involved with those tributes. But other ones that are really pretty incredible too, the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps, their percussion section is going to do a clinic, as well as Will Calhoun and Dave Garibaldi. And another one that's incredible is the London Symphony Orchestra Percussion Ensemble is going to put a clinic out, which I can't wait to see it. But yeah, so just talking about PASIC and the atmosphere and the feeling, I mean, the environment itself. I mean, it's like if you're a drummer, it's a kid in a candy store. It's Christmas Eve. You're looking at all the presents on the floor, and then, oh, by the way, you know, the guys who are working for Zildjian and Sabian and Prologix and all these other, you know, places, the guys who work there are at the booth, and you go and talk to them. So you go to Remo and you talk to Johnny Lee Lane. He's going to be hanging out there. Oh, and by the way, like Bob Becker is going to be hanging out there, or Jim Kilpatrick, and they're just hanging out and they're just having fun playing drums.
Yeah, it's awesome. Obviously, getting to meet the people that are responsible for the products that they're showing right there. So, and obviously at a percussion convention, you walk into the instrument demo area and it sounds, you know, like a percussive convention should sound. Everyone is trying out cymbals, everyone's playing the drums. And I think even that has a subtle element of coolness to it, because you get to see more experienced players just on happenstance as you pass by. You hear something that's like, wow, that person must be really good, and all of a sudden there's like a crowd around this one booth. I know the vendors must love that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're making, you know, they have a professional playing their stuff, making their stuff sound great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll tell you, when you go to PASIC and you go for the live thing, it is nonstop, morning till night. You're up all night meeting people, talking about, you know, concepts and musical ideas and new events and new projects. And then by the end of the weekend, you are just destroyed. You're exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
But still, you leave so inspired because so many great people are there. So many interesting and new ideas are there. The masterminds, I think, of our craft usually show up there to meet with one another, to come up with new ideas and collaborations. When it comes to PASIC for you, do you have like a PASIC concert or a PASIC memory that comes to mind?
Well, the one big one that comes to mind, I guess would have been the second year that I was there. I saw one of the major concerts that night. It was the Percussion Collective, and they had done a through composed piece. It was an original, I think it was a world premiere, in fact, and it was all about water. And they had a video projector with imagery that matched the music perfectly. So all of the shapes and contours of the piece itself were reflected visually in the video, which I thought, like, that's right up my alley. I find that really, really cool that they took the time to put that level of detail into the artistry of something that would have otherwise just been a percussion piece, but they added that extra element to it. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember I remember my first PASIC ever. I got to see Mikado Ozone and Gary Burton play together, and it like blew my mind. It was just some of the most incredible music I'd ever heard. But then a couple other ones, I mean, like seeing any of the Emeritus group, they do an Emeritus Society where it's like all of the principal percussionists from every major symphony for the last 40, 50 years are there. And it's amazing. John Beck, you know, when Alan Abel was there, Bill Platt. I mean, these incredible, incredible players. But one of the things I think that was really incredible, and I know you got to do it with the Marines, and we've got to do it a little bit with the Old Guard, is when a military group gets to play there. There's just also a different atmosphere because there's this, you know, idea of pride, an idea of history, an idea of excellence with musicality. And I think it was last year, or the year before, the Air Force Airmen of Note played there, and Steve Smith happened to be playing drums for them. And it was just like, wait, it's the guy from Journey. Oh, wait, he's an incredible rudimental drummer. Oh, wait, he's basically one of the best drummers you're ever going to see in your life.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. So, I mean, you're not going to see that collaboration really kind of anywhere on the street. So PASIC is definitely a place, if you're interested in those things, to really check out. So over the years, I mean, like people like Shi Wu were there all the time. Bob Becker. We had the Royal Marines that were there from the UK a handful of years ago. There's always some international, Japanese marimba players. I mean, it's incredible, all the different things that they have at PASIC.
Yeah. Mark Ford, Ivan Trevino. I've come across these people just running into them too. It's like, not only are the clinics performances spectacular, but you actually get to meet these people as well. And, pick their brain and talk to them. It's incredible. And it's all very, very open and obvious, like the layout of PASIC.
Right.
So if you want to see something, it's nice that the schedule is blocked out for you and kind of plan out your evening. And then once you kind of have your checklist of things you want to see, then, the hang begins, and then you can socialize, go to the vendors, and do what you want to do.
Right. No, that's awesome. And it's super kid friendly too. So, I mean, if families want to go, it's absolutely incredible for them. So a couple big announcements. The Washington Tattoo is going virtual. We've got 3 shows coming up in 2021. The first one is going to be January 3rd. So trying to get over the sleepiness hangover of New Year's a couple days later. That's Sunday evening at 7:30. We're going to have a virtual show. It's going to be incredible. About 35 to 45 minutes of some incredible acts. We will release those acts over the next few weeks. But we really want you folks to come check out the website, www.thewashingtontattoo.com, and look to our Facebook page and social media. But each podcast that we release will put some more details out there for you. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts? You excited about it?
Very excited. It's going to be probably one of the first of its kind at this scale to host a tattoo virtually. I feel honored to be able to dig into the video once we compile those together. But yeah, it's going to be great. And our goal is to make it as real and entertaining and live as humanly possible, without the ability to, of course, do the tattoo live, which is what we would have wanted. But we think this is going to be the next best thing. And, I think it will lead to other great things as well.
Absolutely. And this whole thing is to really help support the veterans and first responders out there. So, a portion of the proceeds of everything are going to go to those teams. We're looking at partnerships right now with a bunch of different veterans organizations. So absolutely really excited about it. Look out for the other ones. It's going to be January 3rd, the May date, and also a November date. So honoring Memorial Day and also honoring Veterans Day. So without further ado, we will get to the episode with Joshua Simonds, who is the Executive Director for PAS.
All right, greetings, everybody. We have Joshua Simonds here, Executive Director for the Percussive Arts Society, former Executive Director of the Chicago Youth Symphony, holds master's degrees from American University in Arts Management and a bachelor's in Percussion Studies from California State University, Long Beach. He is a consummate relationship builder, innovator, and visionary. So Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Awesome. So I always love starting off with just this question, because I think as musicians, as leaders, we always kind of have a first spark of inspiration. And I always am interested in other people's spark of inspiration. So who would you say is your first big inspiration, and why?
Wow, I probably have, like everyone, you have your personal inspiration and then you have your musical inspiration. The personal inspiration, I would say was my mom. And I know it's probably generic, but my mom actually was a high school principal. And someone who I think I really learned a lot of that administrative stuff from, and kind of the person that, I am right now. And she is a very strong woman, someone who I saw get passed over for things, probably because she was a woman. Not probably, because she was a woman, but someone who persevered. And so she was a huge inspiration, and still is today. to me. And musically, once again, probably like a lot of people, Neil Peart. I mean,
That's a great one. Yeah.
I can remember being in high school listening to Rush with another good friend of mine. Not a lot of people, no one listened to that in our small group, but really understanding, like listening to his lyrics and listening to the drumming and the musicality of it. And I was really, it was a whole new world. And someone who was much older than me introduced Rush to me when I was, how old are you when you go to high school? 14, like that. So, you're totally green. But to have that, was really eye-opening, for me, and obviously, years later, kind of full circle. But those are two, and of course, there's millions of other people that I could say, but I would, off the top of my head, I think those two, both from a drumming musical standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint.
No, that's perfect. I mean, that's what really makes us who we are, is that balance between like our profession and our job, and then who we are as people.
As we are people, 100%, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, you are working with PAS as the executive director. I mean, you're working with tons of artists. You're working with clinicians, educators, industry leaders, the whole gambit. I mean, I would imagine definitely took a lot of learning and trying to figure things out, but like what drew you to kind of the arts management side of the house to begin with?
Yeah. So that started when I was in college in my undergrad. And there's a story, and for me, I know kind of when it started and how it went and who along the way helped me to get to where I am today. So, like you said, I went to Long Beach State, studied percussion with the late, great Dr. Michael Carney, and my orchestral teacher was Rainer Carroll of the LA Philharmonic.
Wow.
Who I took timpani lessons for many, driving house, took timp lessons with him for many, many years. And I was very serious about my percussion studies. Played, at Long Beach, we learned, it was a lot of world music, and, I've been playing steel drums since I was 18 years old. And, playing the timps were really that was kind of my thing. That's where I really loved, and the honors percussion quartet as I was a senior, and really kind of built my way up. But I'm also someone who I'm also a realist, and not saying that dreams aren't important, but when I started looking at everything and saying, okay, I didn't know if I had it in me to be the person to go from job A to B to C and then back here and then teach 10 lessons and go do that gig. I grew up in a house where my parents were both educators, teachers, right? There was a little stability in that, and I enjoyed that. Now, I also, while I was a good percussionist, I wasn't the best one in the studio by any means. But I'll tell you what I did do better than anyone else, and that was make sure that everyone had their stuff done, right? I was the first one to rehearsal. I made sure that everyone had their parts. I made sure that the section was set up. I was there setting things up not because I was good at two shoes, because I know that was an important part of the job.
Yeah,
right?
Extraordinarily important part of the job.
I mean, it was part, I felt that was, and I was always confused why not everyone would get there early and do things. Like as a percussionist, as a musician, as a person, like that's what you do. You get there early. I think I learned that actually in high school in marching band, right? I was in drum corps prior to college. And it was that like, hey, listen, you take personal responsibility, get there early, do the thing, be there. And I enjoyed that. And so people started to count on me to do that. And so one day I also decided, you know what? My older brother was a lawyer. He's a lawyer. And I remember he started talking about his internships. Now his internship was a little bit different than my internship because they paid him a lot and I got a free one. But I called the Long Beach Symphony. I said, hey, do you need an intern? And they said, yeah, come on down. So I went down to the Long Beach Symphony in Long Beach, California. And I met with them. They said, we're going to have you be a development intern. I said, great. And they said, do you have any questions? I said, yeah. They said, what? I said, what's development? I'm this 20-year-old kid, and it was that moment. It was like, okay, they kind of took me under my wing. All these great people at the Long Beach Symphony, mentor of mine, Lisa Bury, who has had jobs of direct development for Lyric Opera in Seattle and Dallas. I mean, she's just incredible. And then the arts, the kind of the operations and programs. So I went from development and operations and learned there, and also there was the music director of the Long Beach Symphony, Joanne Falletta, great conductor of the Buffalo Philharmonic and the Virginia Symphony and the Women's Philharmonic. Yeah, Joanne is just incredible. And to this day, we still are in touch. And she was a huge advocate of mine, basically said, Joshua, we need good leaders in this field. We need people who understand the art, but also understand the music and the business side of it. And Joanne really said, it's okay if you don't pursue, because I was like, do I want to be a conductor? Do I want to be a percussion? All these different things. And I said, I really enjoy this. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying that side of things. And I remember I went back to Dr. Carney and Rayner, and I told them this, and they said, they supported me, but they said, you still need to be a great musician.
Right. And so many things to the details and the nuance of what you're perceiving. It's so great to be there early. It's great to have your stuff done, but if you're not able to quantify why something has quality and why it doesn't have quality, you're kind of missing part of the game. Yeah. Yeah,
no, 100%. So that drew me, that, it was like this idea of, and I speak to a lot of people about this, it's like, you can still be part of the team without actually doing the thing. So if you're interested in sports, but what percentage of people actually make it to play professional sports? But, there's stadium operations and physical therapists and you name it, and you're part of the team. You're just playing a different role. And I was okay with that. I didn't need to be the snare drummer or the, or the timpanist of that, but I could still play a significant role. And that's what really drew me, that it was really about everyone coming together. And so that's still what draws me together, that I still feel very much part of the art form.
And that's such a fantastic response. And I mean, just to revisit what you said about being a part of the team, I mean, how many solo percussionists are there in the world that make it as a living, right? But the thing is, I think we're all hunting for that ownership of excellence. Like, we would all like to have excellence in our life. And quite honestly, it's really difficult to do as an individual, but if you're able to find that niche where you can be a part of excellence and taste it, like, that's addictive. And that's honestly what drives a lot of people and inspires the next generation, because they see how that team works together and they're like, I want to do that. That looks cool.
Oh, I'm 100% a team person. Not everyone may think that. But that's also because when you get to a certain level, a certain role, the buck does stop with you. You have to make the decision, right? And it may not be the one that one person thought, so they don't believe, but most of my decisions come from consensus. I mean, 100%. You may not be part of that majority, but majority of what I decide comes from consensus and buy-in. So, and understanding that. So really it's about that. It was that art. Really still for me, it was like, okay, I'm still an artist. I'm still a musician. I'm still a percussionist. And I will always consider myself a percussionist. Am I going to throw down with the best of them? Of course not. That's not who I am right now. But understanding it and appreciating it and being there and seeing myself there and understanding those who are doing it, I'm okay with that.
I love it. And that segues perfect into the next question too, because I think as you're developing and you're figuring those things out, you have tons of lessons learned that help you quantify the next piece of your craft. And I mean, I'm sure, just like me, there are so many lessons learned. I always say that, like, I fail 95% of the time, and like the 5% is really where I try to like hone in all those lessons of failure to make the next right decision. So, I mean, as you were starting out, what are some lessons learned that you feel helped you to become, where you are today, or help bring you to where you are today?
A big lesson I learned was by watching people who did things that I disagreed with, even from a young age. And when I say young, I mean like college. And this was more in the orchestral world, and not to knock the orchestral world. I was from the time I was 21 to the time I took this job at PAS in 2016, and I won't say how many years that was, but it was more than 20. Just about 20. I was in the orchestra world, and I learned a lot that people did and passed down from one generation to the next on how to lead an organization, and I never felt comfortable with that. I was passed over for jobs because I was outspoken and said, no, this is not how you should do this. And I'm never going to compromise what I believe is right because it's supposed to be that way. So I believe that everyone has a voice. I believe that your intern and your board chair can all have great, right? The person who donates $1 million and the person who is, filing and making copies, everyone has really good ideas. And it's your job as an executive director to take all those ideas from lots of groups of people, from lots of constituents, and then it's like a jigsaw puzzle and say, okay, you learn it all, and then you put it together, and you build this, and then you bring everyone together. And if you can get the 21-year-old and the 70-year-old to essentially come together on a consensus of how something will be, well, then you've done your job. And I learned that that was the right way of doing it, not, well, you can't make a big donation, and I understand that you really want only Beethoven played, or this and that. And I said, no, like everyone's voice, but then in the end, I have to make the decision.
Right.
And hopefully you do it. And so I learned that. I also learned that by unfortunately watching people fail. Like you have to watch people take the good and the bad. And then by trying, you taking a risk and being successful, luckily, and failing sometimes, and then learning from that and creating an environment where if something didn't go right, that you learn from it the next time. I did a lot of that at CYSO. When I had a few different roles at CYSO, ending as the executive director, but a lot of my time there was the general manager, where I really was in charge of all artistic and operations, and having ideas and building consensus and then doing it and trying. And I got a lot of experience there, that hands-on experience working with teachers and professional musicians and students and parents and board members and community members. And I have so much gratitude to, one of my bosses there and the board there, and just so many people, maybe the manager I am today. But a lot of it was, in early days, was just watching what other people did and saying, that didn't sit well with me, and questioning, why do you do that? Why are we doing that? Because some of it just didn't make sense, and it still doesn't to this day. And unfortunately, some orchestras are finding out the hard way, even before the pandemic, right? It's like, oh, how come ticket sales are down? How come audience is down? How come people aren't coming? Just because you turn 40 years old, you're not going to all of a sudden go to the orchestra. I think there's this like, oh, I'm an adult and I should go to the orchestral setting. Well, if it's not appealing to me, I'm not going to go. I was a prime. I was a professional, degree in music, worked whatever, and I didn't have a subscription to the Chicago Symphony. I actually didn't. Sometimes I didn't. There was a lot of other really great, innovative stuff happening. I mean, obviously they're one of the greatest orchestras in the world, but you really, to me, it just was, there's a different way of doing it and supporting some of these other more innovative organizations. And I try to be as innovative as I can.
Well, and I like that, because I mean, there's part of it where everyone sees the glamour side, right? And that's what everyone starts to shoot for. And there's so much non-glamorous work that, again, going back to your idea of the team, to make that team really run, there's a lot of dirty jobs that actually just need to get done. And you know what? It takes a really strong leader to influence and motivate people to do a great job at something that no one may notice. Like someone may never notice it.
No, it's true. And not saying anything negatively about some of these groups, like Chicago Symphony is amazing. I mean, I'd be honored to have worked there and have friends there, whatever. But the way that they did it was just different from how I would do it, right? And I don't think there's any one way. I think it's really important to understand. I don't think there's any one way of doing a job correctly. I think the right way of doing the job is within your own environment, building that consensus with your people and then going together on that way, right? That's the right path.
Right.
It could be a different path for a different organization, but some of those paths that they took and how they went about doing it just didn't work for me. Very,
right.
You know, I was definitely more, let's go this way and let's try this and let's come with me and let's really try this together. That just was more my style, and that didn't necessarily fit in for some of these kind of more very large institutional organizations.
Sure. No, that totally makes sense. And I mean, to just even tout this, I mean, you have been able to really connect with so many people since I've known you in our tenure together. And I mean, quite frankly, you know, hanging out, figuring out the hang part of it, figuring out the logistics part of it, figuring out the managerial part of it, but then also figuring out like, there's the point where it does have to remain fun. And there's like that component there. And man, I've seen you over the years work with so many people, and I've seen you be able to like, you know, hey, do you know so-and-so? Or hey, you need to meet so-and-so. Hey, let's make this happen. And like, there's magical moments there. And like, I wrote this down, but I think you truly do have some of the most magical networking skills I've ever seen. And I mean, that to me has always spoken whenever we've gotten to chat. And quite honestly, when I remember this at one Percussive Arts Society international convention about probably 2 years ago now, but there were people from all different backgrounds, drum set artists from LA, marching folks, and you had made mention of it, and just bringing these folks from symphonic backgrounds and, you know, world music and all of these things that most people would say, there is no way that those two things should ever be together, because there's no way that they would ever have the opportunity to meet one another. And honestly, it meets, and you're the tipping point of that. And I think for me to watch that happen, that's always been inspiring for me. But I mean, other people are probably always wondering, like, how do I make it in the world? How do I do this? And I always think, and I watch how folks network. That's really a major key. And do you have any thoughts on, like, you know, your philosophy on network, or how to network, or even start that process?
Yeah, be genuine. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone you think is a mover and a shaker, right? You know, am I a fast talker? Yes. Am I, do I get excited? Yes. That works for me. But networking doesn't have to be that. Networking is genuine. Networking is relationship, right? Is being you and making those connections. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you're a fast talker, whether you're just kind of, whether you're the person who kind of just says things as they say it, that's okay, because, that's just who I am. I think people sometimes confuse networking. They see it on the TV and they see like the Hollywood agent, right? And they're like, let's do lunch and all these things. Like, no, networking is about building relationships. And that's all it's about. Relationships are totally different with every single person. Yeah, I do feel like it's my job to kind of make those connections with people who may not think that they have something in connection with someone. We all land in these roles without knowing, I remember the conversation, right? It's like, oh, you play in a military ensemble. There's no way you could enjoy, rock music. What? Oh, you play in an orchestra. There's no way you would have been, a drum corps person. Why not? I love, and so we have our own biases even within our field, and that's terrible, right? We're all drummers, percussionists, and so many of us appreciate every single part of it. How many rock drummers played in marching band? How many, of these people who are now doing research, were one time, playing orchestra. Like it doesn't matter. And so to get to know those people, I think the part about being in my role as executive director development, fundraising, networking, everything, you do have to, I think the one part is you do have to really listen to people and remember things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard part, right? I was once told by someone, they said, remember their dog's name. Be so good that the next time you see them, you're like, how's Ringo or Fido or whatever their dog's name is,
Right.
You're like, you got to remember that. Joanne taught me that, she made me feel, and anyone she talked to, like they were the most important person in that room. I remember one or two personal things about them, or a story. Do you remember that? Building that connection, building that relationship. Because it's a starting point, as opposed to, what's that person's name again? Or, no, at least there's something, right? No one's gonna expect you to remember every life story about every single person, but do you remember that? And I think having that, building that connection, building that trust, that network, it's not, when you're networking, it's not just about you. Networking is about the other person.
Amen. Absolutely.
Too many people think networking is like, I have to network for myself. If you're the one doing the networking, well, then you need to be more engaged in them than they're going to want, right? It's not about you.
Right.
So, does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. Cause I mean, that's something, I ended up, meeting some folks from the local Chamber of Commerce, and there's a guy, Jeff Crowley, and he was a networking guy, and he would talk about this whole thing of, I just decided one day to take every meeting, just because I learned that I could do all of these other things, but the most satisfying part for me was the ability to help other people come together. And that starts to add value to not just, me, but that's actually adding value to their lives, as well as bringing us, again, back to that idea of team. And I think a lot of these, they're almost like these principles that keep coming back to how you got to where you are. And it's this team, it's the idea of other people, being honest and truthful with folks. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's really true. And also, there's always time. I'm actually not a big believer in I don't have time, or the people who are like, oh, can we, it's like they schedule a meeting like, oh, I can do that in 4 weeks from now. Like, really? Like, you have no time in the next 4 weeks for a meeting. I don't buy it. I don't have a personal assistant. I've never had a personal assistant. I don't anticipate ever having a personal assistant. I can answer my own emails. I can answer my own phone calls, and I can get back to people. I once had a friend who had their assistant set up something, and I said, tell him if he wants to meet with me, then he can call. Like, I don't need that. Like, that's not personal anymore.
Right.
I'm not that busy. You're not that busy. We don't have like I run the Percussive Arts Society. That's a busy job, but I also have time to grab a coffee with someone who will ask me, or to hop on a call or do something. Like, you have to fit it in, and it's not 9 to 5 either. I do work. Pretty much all. You work all the time these days. I mean, we all do, and that's just unfortunately that's part of it. And there is that work-life balance, but. I'll end this, I'll go home, I'll see my daughter, I'll have dinner, and then I'll have probably another call or two with people tonight, just because that's what has to be done. And that's just part of the job now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something also when you're talking to people, I mean, yes, time is finite. There's only so much amount of time, but the folks who are successful are going to figure out how to manage it and keep people still first,
Yeah, I think a big problem is when we schedule meetings, our calendars are based on 30 an hour meetings. Like, why is every meeting 30 or an hour? Meetings should be as long as the meeting needs to be. And if that meeting is 12 minutes long, then it can end.
Right.
Or
exactly.
if it needs to go 2 hours and 13 minutes or whatever, then that's how long it needs to be. But don't schedule a meeting and then stretch it and then be like, okay, well, we're at the 10:30 time now. It's time to leave. It's like, well, did it just miraculously end at 10:30, or are we done? Or were we done 9 minutes ago? So I end meetings when meetings are done, and then it's on to the next thing. Like, you will save so much time if you just plan your, like, be authentic and schedule the time you need, and then the time that you're done meeting, go on to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. So I'm going to read this one verbatim because I'm not going to be able to remember it perfectly. So I love the idea of adding value, and I feel like you've continued to add value, push boundaries, and quote unquote level up music programs kind of everywhere you've been. And you've committed yourself to doing that. And so one of the things I would love to hear a little bit about is you have, a process for how you decision make or how you build or add to a musical organization. So I'm sure that when you came to PAS, there were things that you were probably looking at or watching. You brought up a little bit earlier, watching certain things fail to gain the lesson. But when you're talking about assessing or evaluating or checking the temperature of the water, like how do you go about some of those decisions?
So you have to put a few different hats on. There's always the artistic hat, but then there's also the marketing hat. There's what I call the mainstream hat.
I'd love to hear more about that.
We're still in the business of selling things. There's an economic aspect to everything we do. How many memberships do we have now? How many registrations do we sell for PASIC? How many people come to the museums at PAS? But each one of our lives. And so if you are so, if you're not willing to have that wiggle room, to expand your audience, and what's the long game? So in Chicago, I was always pushing the boundaries to what I thought a youth orchestra could do. And my music director and I had a great relationship, right? And he wasn't a youth orchestra conductor, he was a conductor. And he worked with these amazing youth, and we played everything. And there were a lot of professional musicians who thought we should only play Beethoven and Tchaikovsky, and we were like, absolutely not. Scriabin. Obviously we played a lot of, whether it was Wagner or, I think we played more than 200 pieces during the time that I was there. We had kind of going, but then it was like, okay, well, what else can we do? Who else can we play with? We had collaborations with the Blue Man Group.
Wow.
Which I brought over to PAS for a PASIC.
Love that.
We did a collaboration with the Chicago Bulls, and we helped them with their Christmas card one year, and we centered the court. You can go out and look on this, and we're playing Sleigh Ride, and they're doing a scrimmage, and it was like we played. We're the only youth orchestra ever play at Lollapalooza.
I thought I had read that somewhere. Yeah, how did that happen?
I called my morning jacket, and after I saw them with the Boston Pops, and I said, "Hey, you're coming to Chicago. You want to do something?" They're like, "I'll tell you what." They're like, "We're going to play the Riviera in Chicago." I don't even know what year this was. This was a long time ago. And let's make it a surprise. All right. So I got a bunch of kids, I think like 12 or 14 of them. We had a few arrangements, and it was going to be we couldn't tell anyone. So this was like, I'm like, but I thought long game. Okay, no marketing out of this, nothing. So like all day long, we had to sit in this club, and I had these kids, whatever. And at the very end, they go off stage, and they quickly changed. And we had this 3-set encore at the end, and it just was awesome. And a few weeks later, they called me and they said, "Hey, we're playing the main stage at Lolla. Why don't we do a full set in a larger group?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we did it. And actually, you still go on. It's still like one of the top 20 moments in Lollapalooza history with Perry Farrell talking about it. And just such a cool, and still in touch with those guys today. They're really great. They're really great. All of them. But yeah, but that, but hey, why not? Right?
Right.
It's a musical experience. And I remember someone said, hey, isn't it so great that you get to introduce all those Lollapalooza people to the orchestra? And I say, isn't it great that I get to introduce all these kids to rock music? It works both ways.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what experiential learning is to a T. I mean, you're giving those kids the opportunity of a lifetime to play with that level of, professional musician. They've got the huge touring buses and everything else. And you know what? There's probably going to be a group of kids that are so inspired by that opportunity that that's going to drive them for the rest of their lives. And
100%. I see a few of them online. They're always once around Lollapalooza time. People kind of post their old picture from like 12 years ago or 15. I don't know how long ago. A long time ago. Yeah, and it's one of those things. We did. We were one of the groups who played with Ben Folds, and that was something that we produced ourselves. That came from that was an economic decision. We had lost a really large grant, and the board wanted me to cut some programs. I said no. I said, we're going to raise money. How are you going to do it? I said, we're going to play with Ben Folds. We're going to sell tickets, and we're going to do this. And I was relentless. I'd wanted to play with him forever, and I finally got a hold of his manager, and she said, all right, well, he has a no negotiation fee for LA, Chicago, New York. I said, fine, I'll pay it. I'm not going to say what it was, but it was a lot of money. And then I said, we're going to rent the Chicago theater, and we're going to do it ourselves, every part of it. And we did. And it was one of the most unbelievable nights of my life, because we also took it really seriously. Like, those kids practiced that music for a month. It wasn't like one of these professional groups who they get the music and they have one rehearsal with Ben Folds and they do a concert, and the truth is they miss a lot of those notes, and they just kind of, whatever. And he actually was like, you guys know this music. I'm like, yeah, we know this music, inside and out. And it was great. And we nearly sold out show at the Chicago Theater and made a lot of money, and saved the season. And at the same time, a ton of marketing, a ton of free press. And, there's that idea that everything you do can have those other things. It's not just, something told me for long, youth orchestra plays concert doesn't really sell well. Youth orchestra plays with, so we had to think outside the box, because we had the Chicago Symphony. If you want to go hear Dvorak or Beethoven or Mendelssohn, you're going to go hear the CSO. But if you want to hear us do the Prokofiev Concerto for Turntables, which was written by Sergei Prokofiev's grandson, who's a great composer and DJ, we played that in Orchestra Hall. So it was these ideas of doing something else, and at the same time, you can also still play a great masterwork at the same time. Programming and learning that. So I really enjoyed, and still to this day enjoy, the programming aspect of things. I think I'm pretty good at it, because I understand that, there's the traditional aspect of it, but there's also this new part, and you have to really meld them together.
No, I love it.
I'm not sure if we got off topic on that, I guess, but that was it. It was just really about experience and understanding your audiences, or your potential audiences, and potential future members and people who are really interested. You always got to be thinking 1 step, 2, 5 steps ahead on the things you're doing, and what kind of lasting impression that can have. Especially these days, things live on forever.
Right.
And so people go and like, hey, do I want to play, do I want to piano? Oh my God, look at that cool stuff at PASIC, right? And we're continuing that stuff. So it's just this, you got to continue to build it, think long-term about it. Everything you do right now is going to affect you, a year, 2, 3, 5 from now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's perfect. That's a great response. So kind of rounding out a couple of these last few questions here too. So you're obviously someone who's a big innovator. What typically keeps you inspired?
All the artists I got to work with.
Yeah.
That's it. 100%. 100%. Going back to the other thing, I feel like I'm part of the team, right? But I get inspired by seeing the people do it.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, I get up close and personal, and sometimes backstage pass to that. And, obviously there's some perks of the job, but that's what keeps me really just like being in awe, being a fan still.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of everything, seeing, the work that you do, or getting to hang out with Steve Smith, or going to a drum corps show, or seeing an amazing orchestra, or, the world music stuff. I mean, I'm inspired by the work that's being done and all the new stuff today, and being able to learn about that. When I came into PAS 4 years ago, I had to re-teach myself all this stuff because I had been in the orchestral world only. And so it really has been fun to really get to just be like, what have I missed the last decade or more of really just being about drums and percussion. And so that's been really fun to really kind of dive into it.
I love that. There's a book I've read that's called Recapturing the Wonder, right? And it's always talking about as we get older, we get more jaded and like we get kind of more stuck in our ways. And I kind of look at, being an artist and trying to remain fresh and remain like hip on what's new. It may not be your favorite thing, but there's always appreciation you can draw from just about anything. And I mean, I remember sitting down with Bob Becker and like, showing him something that would be completely foreign, this crazy fife and drum thing from, Sweden or from, sorry, David Lindberg. I know Swedish fife and drum has a huge history. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. But that's for us in the States, like that's completely out in left field. And I remember showing that to different folks and they're like, man, that's really cool. And I always have in the back of my mind is like, Bob Becker is one of the most amazing musicians in the world, but he still finds that wonder and that awe to keep himself going. And I really admire that about him and, the folks like yourself and others who they remain a fan. And that to me is always really inspiring.
100%. I was at a concert with a friend, Jeff Queen, and we went to see Journey with Steve. And beforehand, Steve wanted Jeff to teach him a stick trick. And he had been working on it, and I was watching the two of them do this, and then in the middle of the concert, Steve pulls it out, and we were just like, yes, like how cool is that, but it's just this like, hey, I've been watching your stuff and I've been doing this, and can you show me something? And it was just, so cool. The other thing I would say that also keeps me is nostalgia.
Nice. How so?
There's so many things that I think, nostalgia brings back these usually really amazing memories for people. And if we can use those memories to bring connection back to people, I programmed the Michelle Camillo concert last year at PASIC. And that was a personal thing. I was like, we've got to. Why? Well, because it was nostalgic for me. I mean, it was a person. But the more I talked to people, everyone was like, yeah, oh yeah. Like I remember playing to, El Negro and Michelle and all the CDs and everything like that. And it was this like idea of just a time in your life to think back to. We were younger and everyone was younger, right? No matter whether you're 40 and you're 20 then, or you're 70 and you're 50 then, but it brings back these emotions. And that's what music is, it brings back emotion. And so I think that we have the ability to kind of do that as well. And that's also what helps me with some of these, all these questions you're asking, is that just that thinking back and what it means for people. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I love that. And I always kind of attribute us as we're memory makers. Like we are in the business of crafting memories for others, and if we get the byproduct of that, then great. But if we can make other people have a great memory, like we've done our job,
Oh yeah.
Well, awesome. So few things here. So obviously COVID's real weird. There's a lot of strange stuff going on. People are kind of stuck. I mean, are there things that you typically like, you have a method or an idea of like when you get stuck, what are some things that you typically do?
I'll call a friend. I've had more phone calls. I stopped with the texting and the emailing as much, and I've actually just picked up the phone and had a conversation.
You went old school.
Yeah. And it's been great to actually connect with someone, because when you talk to someone, you can hear the emotion. you can hear what they're going through, and they can hear what you're going through, and they can say, "How you doing?" You say, "I'm all right," and they say, "No, you're not." I say, "Yeah, I'm really not." As opposed to an email, "How you doing?" "Good." There's no follow-up, right?
Right.
It's static. And so that's been really helpful. And I would say right now, pick up the phone call. None of us are great right now. None of us are doing great. You know, we're trying to manage our jobs and our families, our emotions, our well-being, our physical and mental well-being. And so most of us aren't 100% right now. But pick up the phone, call someone, just chat. And it goes a long way. If you need a call, call me. Call me in the office. You know, I'm here. It's lonely. I'm one of the only ones here. So, you know, but I would say that's what people can be doing right now. It goes a long way.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. So staying in that same vein, I mean, PAS has a ton of stuff online and everything else. So from a resource point of view or advice for, say, music educators, what is something you feel like you could share with them during this time?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great information out online. And I would say that have purpose behind what you're asking someone to do. You know, find the right thing. You know, there's a lot of information online because anyone can post anything online. So make sure that you're asking the right people, where can I go to find something? You know, the community gets smaller and smaller the more, you know, the internet brings us all together, right? So you have access to really anyone. You know, don't be afraid just to call someone or email someone about a question. You know, at PAS, we have a lot of, you know, we help make those connections to people. So, you know, there's ways we can do it. We have our group membership, you know, and by being part of our network, we can help make those connections for you. It's a big part of what we do. It goes back to that networking part. We want to bring people together. You know, we want to bring people together. This isn't a one-way thing. And that's the other thing. And that whenever you can have a more, watching a screen is great for some things, but it's out of everything we can do right now, it's the least, right? Find those places where you can actually have some dialogue, some interaction. I tell the same thing with my 9-year-old, you know? It's like, okay, if you're going to go online, do something, you play one of the games where you actually are interacting, have an interaction or play something, not just watching the video.
Right.
Video is fine, but it's really not doing much. So I would say try to find as many of those interactive opportunities as you can.
No, that's beautiful. My 6-year-old is like Minecraft crazy right now, and he's like talking about obsidian and smelting things and how many of this potion, and I'm going, and he's talking to his cousin, he's talking to his friends down the street, and it's at least a way that the kids can still interact and be social.
Yep. We got Minecraft and Roblox. And yeah, and she has her cousin in California and a friend who we haven't seen, and we make sure it's safe. You know, obviously we still have to make sure it's safe for our kids. But yeah, be interactive. Have that moment, not just the stare at the screen thing. And I think it goes for everybody.
Right. All right. So, greatest musical memory. What do you got?
Oh my God, greatest musical memory. Programming or watching or playing. Those are very. I'm in a weird place, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you have one for each, that would be great.
Greatest musical memory, programming. I have to be one of the few that I said. It was either, you know, the Michelle Camillo or CYSO at Lollapalooza or Ben Folds, or in one of the, you know, I took them on so many tours to different countries, and you've been around the world playing,
right? And
those experiences are pretty great. So I think that would be programming. Watching, have to be Rush.
Yeah, awesome.
Rush. Period. Playing. Oof. It's been a long time. Mark, since I actually. It's been a long time since I actually played that.
I was having an Obi-Wan Kenobi moment there. You're like, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time since I actually had man, this is sad. It's sad that I can't think of like, my senior year of high school marching band.
Okay.
That's a special kind of moment. We were a very good band. I was a drum major.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think it was that my senior year of high school was the time I actually got it, and I started to get ready to go to college, and then this journey began. So I would say that, like, that's kind of where maybe, I don't know, there's a million. I don't know, I've played timpani in some cool spots.
No, but I love that. I mean, if you think about it, that's like a cocoon moment, right?
Yeah, it's a moment. Is it the greatest musical played by life? No. I have so much more joy watching the things that I've helped create by far. Having those 2 or 3 minutes in PASIC, or watching the rehearsals that I've been a part of, where the kids are playing or whatever it may be, that's where I find so much joy in, like, yes, this is awesome.
I love it. All right. If the current you could tell your 20-year-old version of yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
Buy Amazon. Don't sell my Bitcoin. I'm kind of the Doc Brown, like, your future hasn't been written yet.
That's good.
Like, anyone can still be the thing you want to be. I don't care what age you are, 20 or 40 now or 60, like, if you have a dream, go chase it.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. All right, cool. Last question. So tons of stuff happening all over the place right now. So what do you have coming down the pipe right now, personally, professionally?
PASIC 20. It's all about PASIC 20 right now. Many people know that just like many of our colleagues, we're going virtual. And I've said this, we haven't used the word cancel once in any of our things. We're not canceling PASIC. We've moved PASIC from Indianapolis into your home, your school, your living room, you name it. That's it. That's all we've done. We've lowered the price. We've shrunk it by 1 day, but we're going to try to make PASIC, we're going to try to make it as close to that experience as we can. We're going to try to get more people to come to PASIC this year who can never come to PASIC, whether nationally or internationally. We're going to get people that experience that flair, and hopefully they say, okay, we want to actually come and experience what it's like to hang out in the bar or do the pad jam on Saturday night. And if you don't know what a pad jam is, we're not going to tell you. You have to come and wait till Saturday night at the West End and then find us, or just walk the hallways and run into somebody and just be like, hey, can we have a conversation? And them say yes. Nothing we do can actually replace an in-person PASIC. And if you've been to in-person PASIC, you can't. But we're going to make it as educationally and exciting as we can, and have all the components, the networking, the clinics, the expo as we can. And so we're working, myself, the staff here, the board, our volunteers, we're going to work nonstop up until the middle of November to make sure that we can offer that.
That's great. Awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me on, and everyone should stay safe and healthy out there. And hopefully we see you online at PASIC 20.
Awesome. It's been an honor, my friend. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Hello again, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast. We'd like to take a second to thank a new special supporter of this tattoo podcast project, Tap Space Publishing. They are offering Washington Tattoo Podcast listeners a 10% discount code on their entire purchase. So if you type in the discount code WA-TATTOO in all capitals, you'll receive 10% off your entire purchase until December 31st of 2020. Again, in all capitals, that discount code is WA-TATTOO. And again, thank you so much to Jim Casella and Murray Gussick for your support of our project. I hope you are enjoying this podcast. Thanks again. Greetings again, everyone. We just wanted to take a second to say thank you to Seif Studios for their creative media. If you want to find out more about Seif Studios, look them up on www.seifstudios.com. We'd also like to say thank you to our educational partner, ProLogix Percussion, American-made drum pads. they're doing a special discount code for our listeners today. So if you go to www.prologixpercussion.com and type in TWT20, you will receive 20% off your entire order. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and please check out our supporters.